Okay, welcome everybody to the Vice President's training. My name is Leslie Powell, and this year I am serving as the Santa Clarita Valley Council PTA Executive Vice President. Our agenda for today is these 5 things. We're going to do a quick welcome. We're going to go over general roles and responsibilities. We are going to see examples of vice presidents. We're going to find out ways to set yourself up for success, and we're going to look at some resources. So welcome. Let's just take a minute to get to know each other. You can raise your little virtual hand if you are brand new to PTA. Do we have anybody brand new to PTA? Okay. How about experienced as a VP? Is anybody experienced as a VP? Good. How about a little nervous to get going this year? Anybody nervous? Okay, well, I'm hoping that the information that we go over today helps make you a little bit more comfortable. But also please remember that if you have any questions, we are always available to answer those questions. If you send us an email, we will get back to you most likely within 24 hours. Most of us will get back to you quicker than that. Text messages are fine too. You can find our contact information on our council website, which is scvpta.org. So the first thing we're going to talk about are roles and responsibilities of vice presidents. This is a little bit tricky because what a vice president is at one unit isn't necessarily the same at every unit. So the number one rule that I'm going to tell you is to check your bylaws, including your standing rules, to see which positions for your unit are actually listed as vice presidents. That should be right there in the body of your bylaws or in the standing rules. It will specify which ones are VPs. And a lot of units also have within their standing rules descriptions, job descriptions of each of those things. So that's the number one place for you to look. Number two, talk to your president and your predecessor. So whoever had your job last year, the year before, send them an email and say, hey, can we chat for a few minutes? I just want to have a little bit more background information on what exactly I'm doing here, and maybe you can help me along the way. And then the third thing is to check the toolkit on capta.org. If you have never looked on capta.org at the toolkit, you need to immediately go there, right, as soon as we're done here. The toolkit is exactly what it is named. It is a reference for you, all things PTA. So if you have a question, you can go to the toolkit, you can type in the search bar whatever your question is about, and I'm going to guess 90% or more of the time, you will be able to find your answer in the toolkit. Included in the toolkit are job descriptions for most positions. There are a couple of positions that some of our units are very creative and kind of unique, and they've created their own positions, and you won't find those on the capta.org website. Those are the ones that you're really going to need to talk to your president, your predecessor, and check your bylaws and standing rules for descriptions. So this slide here kind of details some of the general responsibilities of all vice presidents. Number one, you will meet with a committee to create a plan that supports all of the goals and missions of the PTA at your school and state PTA and national PTA. As you are doing this planning, you need to make sure that you are checking the insurance guide for requirements. We do have an insurance broker called AIM, and they do provide an insurance guide, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail later. But It tells you what is and isn't allowed to be done at your site as far as insurance approval goes. As a vice president, you will present reports to the executive board for approval. So anything that you are planning on doing that your committee talks about that you would like to do, you need to go to the executive board and give a presentation. And by presentation, I don't mean it needs to be a PowerPoint or anything like that. Just a verbal presentation. If you have any handouts that you'd like them to see, pass those around for everybody to see, and then make a motion to approve whatever the plans are that you've made. If you are going to sign any contracts in your role, you need to follow the guidelines for those contracts. I'm going to touch on this again later also, but all contracts need to be approved by the association and signed by the president and one other board member. If you are a vice president, you are also a board member, so you would be able to sign contracts. But you alone are not allowed to sign contracts. The president must be one of the signers of contracts. And no contract can be signed unless it's approved. You need to follow all financial procedures, which means you need to know the budget. You need to move to release the funds from your line item. You need to move to spend funds that you need. And any paperwork that's necessary to request funds or be reimbursed or whatever you might need needs to be completed properly and turned in promptly. And then when everything's all done, you will complete and present a report following that activity or program. And this usually is done at an association meeting so that the entire association can hear your assessment of how it went and what you might change next time and things you would like to keep in the future. Now, I said that vice presidents vary based on units. And so, oh, Natalie, do you have a question?
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Sorry, Natalie, did you have a question?
No need to apologize.
Walker's talking to me, sorry.
This is Natalie Bacon. I didn't have a question. I think there might be another Natalie in here, but
well, your virtual hand is up, so we're good.
Oh,
it may have been from the beginning.
Yes, it was. Thank you.
We're good. Okay, so examples of vice presidents. So like I was saying earlier, vice presidents vary by unit. So I'm going to go through just a few different types of vice presidents, and I'm hoping that you will fall into one of these categories. If not, we will talk about some other ones later, and I can answer specific questions as we go too. The first one I'm going to talk about is executive vice president. I'm sure that some of you here are the executive vice president. That is what my job is for Council PTA this term. And here are just a few items about executive vice president. In addition to all of the duties that every executive board member has, the executive vice president will do these things. The executive vice president serves as the primary aide to the president. You're the go-to when the president can't be there. If the president needs help with a particular job, you will help with that job. All of those small things that the president needs, you're kind of there to assist. You also are responsible for helping to lead the PTA to accomplish the goals and purposes and to enforce policies and make sure that things are being done correctly. And then, like I said, if you look in your bylaws and your standing rules, there may be further descriptions. Some units feel like the role of executive vice president is kind of vague. And so they have assigned specific tasks for each vice president. In addition to these kind of vague things, they might have specific things to do, like maybe you will help form the agendas, or maybe you will actually run the meeting and the president will just be there to assist the actual running of the meeting. It kind of varies unit by unit. So again, check your bylaws, check your standing rules, check with your president and see what is needed from you. These job descriptions mainly are pulled right from the CAPTA website, in that toolkit that I talked about earlier. Another example of a vice president is the vice president of programs. If you are the VP of programs, in addition to all of those regular duties that any executive board member has, you also will be responsible for collaborating with the principal, with the PTA president, with committees, with other groups on campus like teachers, or if you have a student council or things like that, to plan and implement programs for the school year. This could be anything from assemblies. A lot of units are very specific, and the VP of programs, that is their job, assemblies, finding assemblies, working with the principal to calendar, which is number 2 on here, to calendar these assemblies and then implement them. Other units, the VP of programs does more than just assemblies, and they would be responsible for all of the big programs of the year, like maybe you do a fall festival or you do dances, and maybe that's the VP of programs job. It, again, is very specific to your unit, and you just need to check with your president or check with your bylaws and see what exactly your role is. But whatever your program is, you would need to publicize it, and you would also be the one who is kind of overseeing all of the volunteers and trying to recruit volunteers to help you put on your program. Again, make sure that you are checking to see exactly what the VP of programs does at your school. Another very common vice president is the vice president of fundraising. Sometimes it's also called vice president of ways and means. Just depends on your bylaws. So if you look in your bylaws and you have a vice president of ways and means, it also means fundraising. So again, just like every other VP, you need to go by all of the duties of a regular executive board member. But in addition to that, you will also work with a committee to plan and organize the fundraising activities. Now, it came up, I was in an association meeting the other day, and I was talking to their fundraising VP, who said, I don't have a committee, I am the committee. Ideally, you will have a committee. We really, really encourage you to advertise. See if you can put an advertisement on your social media. If you use Parent Square, see if you can advertise on Parent Square and say, you know, we're looking for volunteers to be on the fundraising committee. If you would like to volunteer to be on this committee and help plan and organize the fundraisers, please contact, and put an email address for them to contact. Ideally, it should be more than one person. It's a big job, and hopefully you're not all alone. But you will work with that committee to plan all of those activities. You will focus on only raising the funds that your unit needs. Sometimes units get caught up in fundraising, and they have so many fundraisers throughout the year. Maybe monthly, they're having restaurant nights every month, and then they do a big fun run, and then they do a carnival that raises money, and it seems like they are always raising money. In PTA, we have this 3-to-1 rule where for every one fundraiser, you are required to have 3 programs. So like 3 give backs, we call them. So a give back would be something that you don't make any money on. You are sponsoring the activity and you won't be raising funds for it. So like Reflections would be an example of a program that does not raise any funds. So make sure that you're not fundraising just to fundraise. You want to make sure that you have a purpose for raising the money that you're raising, and all you're trying to do is meet the needs of your budget. Make sure that all of your fundraising activities follow the guidelines and policies of PTA, including insurance. And then when your fundraiser is done, you're going to present, well, before your fundraiser, you're going to present the report to the executive board and the association to get it approved. And when it's done, you're going to go and report on how you did. Another vice president that some units have is a vice president of communications. The Vice President of Communications job description is kind of always changing. And again, this one will vary unit by unit. You basically are going to work with your president and your executive board and make sure that you're sharing all of the great things that your PTA is doing. You can help advertise membership, you can advertise programs, you can advertise family engagement activities. All of those things can be done through newsletters, through email, through social media posts, websites, whatever ways you have, Parent Square, all those things. And that would be your job as the VP of Communications. There are social media guidelines that are set forth by California State PTA and district and council as well. You also might have some policies that your school district, your school, and maybe even your own unit have set, just to help everybody kind of stay safe and make sure that everybody's protected. And if you are doing these things, there should be some approval process. At most units, it is required to get all flyers and things approved by the president and the principal before they are published. So please check in with your president and find out what the requirements are at your school. There are other vice presidents. Like I said, some units are very creative and they have other vice presidents listed. Here are some that I could think of off the top of my head. You might have a VP of leadership. In the 34th district PTA, there is a VP. Instead of an EVP, there is a first VP of leadership. That person is responsible for training and things like that. At some units, membership is a VP. At a lot of units, actually, membership is a VP. But for our purposes here, we have a whole separate membership training, just because membership is kind of an animal in and of itself. Another big one that is growing in popularity is DEI, otherwise known as diversity, equity, and inclusion. Something that a lot of units have taken some time to look at a little bit more closely and have found value in creating a position for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that person kind of looks at everything that the PTA does and makes sure that it's accessible for everyone, no matter their circumstances or situations at home. It would be accessible. Sometimes the volunteer coordinator is a vice president. And I don't know if there are any others. If you guys, if I did not list any of yours and you're something that I did not name and you want to share, we can do that, or we can save it for the end and talk about it there too. But those are some examples. So we're going to spend just a couple of minutes on ways that you can set yourself up for success. These are some of the things that you may know about, but you may not. So if you don't understand some of these things and you need some clarification, please feel free to stop me, or again, we can wait until the end and answer questions at the end too. Just jot a note down. I want you to remember that there are some financial procedures that you really need to keep in mind as you're moving forward. If your position requires you to spend money in any way, these are some things that you need to keep in mind. There are forms called payment authorization forms. So if you need to purchase something for your program or your activity, whatever you're doing, there's a form that somebody on your PTA has. If they don't have it, look on CAPTA.org. There are some sample forms on there. Just so you know, you don't have to use the one that is on CAPTA. You can make one that is more personal to your PTA, but kind of follow the basic form that they have, and you can personalize it with your PTA's name and things like that. This is the form that you would fill out to write a check to somebody. So if you bought something and you needed to be reimbursed, you would fill this form out and attach your receipts, follow the instructions that are on the form, make sure you fill it out legibly and submit it. and then your president and your secretary and your treasurer all have to sign it, and then you would get your check cut to you. There are cash verification forms. So if you are involved in counting money for any event, so like if you're working at the book fair, or you're working at a fall festival or a dance, and you're taking in cash, there are special forms. Also, you can find those on capta.org, where you would list all of the money that was brought in, and 2 people have to be present to sign it. Always 2 people have to be present to sign it. One of them should be a chairperson or executive board member, and the other one just needs to be a PTA member. Some of our units have specific money counting procedures that are listed in the standing rules. If you don't know what the standing rules are, they're the very last couple of pages of your bylaws, and every unit should have them. Some units have specified how money is to be counted and how many people need to be present, because they require more than 2, and where it's put and where the money is taken and who is notified and all kinds of things, just safeguards that have been put into place. So check to see if you have any of those in your standing rules. We already talked about contracts. I did mention that every contract needs to have 2 signatures. I don't think I mentioned how you are to sign a contract, but here is how you sign a contract. You would sign whatever your name of your PTA is, ABC PTA by your name. So ABC PTA by Leslie Powell. The reason we do it this way is because you personally aren't signing the contract, your PTA is. So always remember that first. It's my PTA that's signing the contract, so PTA comes first. But since PTA is not a single person, I am representing the PTA, and so my name comes second. But remember, it always has to be 2 people, one of whom is the president. Fiduciary agreements. This one might apply if you, especially if you are a fundraising VP, and some of the money that you are raising is going to be gifted back to the school. There is a form, again, on capta.org called a fiduciary agreement. And that form is filled out when the PTA donates money, say, back to the school or the school district. And you just fill it out. It's pretty self-explanatory. You fill it out. You specify what the money is to be used for and when it is to be used by, and it is signed by your president, and it is then sent to your principal or the superintendent or whoever needs to sign it, and then they return it to you signed, and then you hang on to that form. One note about personal gifts and gift cards. One big rule, and this is a nonprofit rule, is that PTAs are not permitted to use PTA monies for personal gifts or gift cards. So as much as we would like to, let's say there's somebody has surgery and we want to send them flowers from the PTA, we cannot. Now, that doesn't mean that you as individuals can't collect money and send them as individuals. That's fine. You just cannot use money that belongs to the PTA for those gifts. So don't collect the money, put it in the PTA's bank account, and then write a check. Don't do that. Have one person collect the money and send the gift. That's permitted. Along with personal gifts, the other big one that some units don't know, and this is very important, is you are not allowed to use PTA money to purchase gift cards for any reason. So whether that means you're doing a incentive raffle for your teachers or for people who have joined the PTA, or a giveaway at your dances or whatever, you cannot buy gift cards. Again, they can be donated for a purpose. So maybe you will say, we would like to do a giveaway at our teacher appreciation lunch. If you would like to donate a small gift card for this giveaway, we are collecting them. Then you can collect those and give those away, but you cannot use money that you have collected as a PTA to purchase gift cards, because it's basically cash and it can't be traced. And it's a whole nonprofit thing, so don't do it. If you see it happening at your unit, tell them no and send them to us, and we will explain it if you can't. Some other things to keep in mind to help you be successful. is liability and insurance. I touched on this earlier. There is an insurance guide. AIM is our broker. The insurance guide is available on capta.org. You search for it, and I have it in my resources slide as well. If you search for it, you can find the entire guide. You can print it out if you want, or you can just look at it online. In that guide, there are activities listed as red, yellow, and green events. So if you want to do an activity and you look in the insurance guide and it's on the red list, that means no. That means stop. You may not do those red activities. If your activity is listed on the yellow list, that means you might be able to. And usually there will be some special extra steps that need to be taken, or you need to contact the insurance broker to find out if you need to purchase like an additional coverage, or if there are special things that need to be done in order to make it doable. If it is, however, listed on the green list, that means you can do it. Now, here's the caveat. Before you do anything, whether it's green or yellow, if your school district does not allow it, you may not do it. So even if it is on the PTA green list, that doesn't mean that you can go ahead and do it. You need to make sure that you are in constant contact with your administrators and the school district to make sure that the things that you're planning are allowed to be done as far as the district goes. Along with insurance, there's a hold harmless form that's also included in there. You will see in the insurance guide when the hold harmless form needs to be completed. There's also something called a PTA waiver that's also part of the insurance packet. All participants in any PTA activity at your school need to have a waiver signed. It's kind of a release of responsibility in case anything were to happen. So usually PTAs send these out at the very beginning of the year. They can be sent out digitally and collected digitally. So that makes your lives a little bit easier. And usually you will see people send them out with the photography release, which is the next thing on the list. And that just allows you to use photos of students. And you'll see on there, some parents do not want any photos of their kids used at all. And so you really need to keep track of that and make sure that you're doing your best to only use photos of people who have signed that release. I have minutes on here as far as liability and insurance goes, and that's because everything that you do has to be approved, and not only does it have to be approved, but it has to be recorded in the minutes. So this is for your protection. If you were holding an event and it was never approved, which means it was never in the minutes, and something happened and you needed to make an insurance claim, the first thing they're going to do is ask you to see your minutes. Because if it was not approved by your association, they won't cover you. So always keep that in the back of your mind, whether it's for something that you yourself are responsible for or other things. So if you see that your executive board is planning on having a book fair and it sounds great and they've created flyers and they've advertised it and they've signed the contracts, but they never moved to approve holding the book fair using whatever company you're using, it's not approved. It's not official. So they need to make a motion at the executive board and then carry that to the association and get it adopted by the association before any of those things can happen. And it needs to be in your association minutes that it was approved. Facilities use addendum, I'm sure you have seen. It is a form that we oftentimes have to fill out to hold an event in a room or in a location at your school site. Now that one you might not need because right now I know there are no activities on campuses, but in the future you might. The last one that I have on here is the conflict of interest / whistleblower form. This one, if you have not already seen it, take note of it now and let your president know that your president should have asked each and every board member to fill out a conflict of interest and / whistleblower form. This basically just asks you if the PTA is going to be doing any business with any personal interest that you or somebody that you are a close relative of have. So if you own a business and the PTA uses your business for something, you need to disclose that you are owner of said business. So each and every person on your board should fill this out and return it to your president at the beginning of every school year. That form also can be found on the CAPTA website. Which takes us to our resources. So on here, I have listed all the websites that I've kind of been talking about. scbpta.org is our Santa Cruz Valley Council PTA website. On there, I invite you to go on there and just kind of poke around a little bit. There are webinars that we have done in the past. There are recordings of trainings like this one that we have done in the past. There are due dates for things. The calendar is there. You can find the remittance form that Erin was talking about earlier. There's a whole wealth of information, and there are links to other informative sites as well. If you go to 34thpta.org, that's 34th District PTA's website. You can also find trainings and calendar and things like that there. CAPTA.org is the California State PTA's website, which is just chock full of information. Again, if you have not taken a look, I strongly encourage you to go there. I would really bet that almost every question you have can be answered there fairly quickly. If not, reach out to us and we can point you in the right direction or get an answer for you. That link that I have right there with the Leader Services Insurance, that's where the actual insurance guide can be found, but you see that it is housed in the CAPTA.org website. And then PTA.org is National PTA's website. And on the National PTA website, you can find all kinds of just informational topics, current things that are going through legislation and things like that, but you can also find National PTA's training modules. National PTA is the one that created and puts forth the entire Reflections program. So if you want to get like the overview of Reflections, you can find that on PTA.org. If you want to find the state Reflections things, that again will be found on CAPTA.org. Your council president is Erin Hester, and that is her email right there. Your 34th district president is me, and my district email is listed right there, but I also serve as the council EVP. So reaching out to either of us, we can help you get the information that you need. We can provide support at your unit. Whatever you need, we are happy to help. And that is pretty much it. This is my personal email. So this is the one that I kind of use mostly for council. The other one is my state email. I invite you to email me, text me anytime, and I will get back to you. I'm going to stop recording real quick, and then we can do some questions.